to my channel. If you are joining us live, comment in the chat box and say hi. If you're new here, I'm Vanessa. I am a YA fantasy, paranormal, and horror writer and book publisher. Um, and on this channel, I talk about books, writing, and all things storytelling relating. And today's live stream is part of my monthly Writing Diversity interview series. This is a series I created to help writers learn how to write diverse characters. So, in today's live stream, I have my friends here, Holly Davis and Heather Venkat, and we're going to be talking about Holly and Heather's experiences growing up biracial. Um, so I'm gonna give you guys a chance, Holly and Heather, to say hi and give like a brief introduction of yourself.
Sounds good. Thank you for having us on. I'm excited to be here. Oh, you guys can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes.
I just realized because like usually have sometimes I need to have my mic on and I just randomly was realizing that it wasn't like pushing into my face. So even though I was talking to you this whole time beforehand. But hi, I'm Holly, also known as Write Holly Davis across the interwebs. I am also an author tuber. I'm a kidlit writer, currently querying a YA fantasy, and I'm plotting and outlining a middle grade contemporary fantasy for NaNoWriMo. I'm also the host of the Diversity is Lit book club, where we read one book by a BIPOC author every month and discuss it on my YouTube channel. And these two lovely girls are my co-hosts, so their faces should look familiar, or I should look familiar rather.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Venkat, Holly's twin, and known as Write Heather Venkat or Write Venkat on social media. And I am also a kidlit writer. Currently in a little bit of a lull, a little hiatus, but my next step is to finish editing my middle grade contemporary novel, which does feature a biracial character.
Awesome. Cool.
So we could talk about that later.
Yes, I have all the questions, and I know Holly has a character that features a biracial character. So, hi, Avian. Thank you for joining us. So glad you could be here.
Yay, my new internet bestie. That's what we deemed ourselves. When I found out that she was biracial too.
Oh,
she
awesome.
commented when I shared your first post about the live streams. She had said that, and I'm like, "You are the coolest person!"
Yay!
Hey, cool. Well, for those of you who have seen my interviews before, you know that I always start with this quick disclaimer. So just to get it out of the way, want to remind everyone watching, no group is a monolith. So Holly and Heather are here graciously sharing with us their experience growing up biracial. And hopefully this will help other authors out there who want to write a biracial character. But keep in mind, their experiences do not represent everyone who is biracial. So always make sure you do your research well and get sensitivity readers for your stories. So with that being said, let's dive in. My first question for you both is just, can you share what it was like for you growing up biracial?
Yeah, definitely. We kind of had that's why I like that you give the disclaimer at the beginning, because I'm like, man, our experience is pretty different and unique, just because of the family dynamics that we ended up experiencing, where my mom and dad both had previous marriages. So they all had, my mom had a kid, my dad had lots of kids, but and they had us. And we, you know, didn't grow up with our dad for the whole time because our parents actually divorced when we were in second grade. So it's very
Holly, can you bring the mic? Like, I'm losing you a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. Is that better?
Much better.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. See, I told you. So I was like, wow, you guys could hear me? Like, okay.
It was fine in the beginning, but
That's
then
so weird.
started
Okay.
losing you.
Once I started talking. Sorry about that. So should I repeat what I said?
Just a little bit. If you want to go back a little.
Okay, yeah. So, well, first off, I'll say that our mom is white and our dad was black, and they both were previously married, had kids, and then married each other and had Heather and I. So, but our experiences were a little bit different in that our parents divorced when we were in second grade. So what were we, like 6, I think? And then our dad passed away when we were in 8th grade. So it was very different in that, like, when we were younger, we had all of these experiences with our dad. And then when our parents were divorced, we visited our dad once every 2 weeks, I believe, on the weekends. And that's how we were able to still, you know, be involved in our dad's side of the family and take part in all of the things that our dad's family did. But when he, well, I guess it can go into it more because it's like growing up. But when he passed away, it was hard because we kind of became detached from our dad's side of the family. So it was just really interesting because it was like a little bit of our identity got lost until we reunited years later when Heather and I were in college, and friended, or I don't know like who started it, but maybe some of our family members on our dad's side friended us on Facebook, and that kind of kicked off the whole thing. And now we're like happily kind of back in part of our dad's side of the family, but there was a while there where we were very disconnected from it. I know there's like so much to say, so I don't want to like go. Yeah, I'll just say that for now.
Yeah, I think Holly kind of summed us like growing up very well. I mean, just kind of how we, or I guess I was feeling growing up. I was always very proud that my dad was black, and you know, since we didn't look black, I know there's still more to say, but in getting into the other questions, but you know, most people like it, you know, it was more of a shock, like when we would tell our classmates, but I was always like, that was always, I remember the thing that I was like excited to tell people, because that's something that they wouldn't know about me right away just by looking at me. And so, you know, I think that was interesting because our dad was black, but he was kind of lighter skinned. And so, you know, over the years, we ended up meeting more, you know, biracial people, and seeing even the diversity amongst the biracial people was very interesting. But we never, I don't recall ever really meeting other biracial people, like probably until high school. I specifically remember there was one girl in my classes who was half black and half white. And she had a little bit of a darker skin. But I thought that was interesting how we hadn't met anyone else. But we, before our parents got divorced, we did go to, I believe it was preschool at the school where he used to work at and like coach football and stuff. And that was an all-black school. I do recall there was one girl who was albino, and then Holly and I were the only ones who were lighter skinned. But I never felt like, I don't know, weird or uncomfortable. It just felt natural. Like, yeah, we're all like kids. We're all in the same place together. But then the rest of our, schooling was, in more traditional kind of predominantly white with other mixed, with other races in there, like public schools.
Yeah, I kind of agree with everything that Heather said. And I think it was interesting, like, yeah, starting off school with like, mostly Black classmates. And like, I didn't feel different or anything, or, like we were getting the white Barbies, the Black Barbies, like everything. Not that we like didn't see color, but it was just, we grew up just being exposed to, different cultures and races. And I think like it helped to have such a, like, our dad's side of the family is amazing. The Davis family is incredible, where we have like family reunions and huge family reunions with everyone across the US every 2 years, and then a family picnic every year. Now, when we were younger, I don't quite remember as much, but I do remember it was probably the last like family reunion that we went to at this banquet hall, and it was just like, you're here, you're family, and we're just here to have fun. And so like, at least growing up, it was like we just had the best experiences.
Oh, awesome. I see a few comments people are put in here. Afian said, wow, so weird. Mom and dad had 3 of us, including me. Dad remarried and had other half siblings.
Ah, nice.
Cool.
Nice.
And Magic Mulata joined us. Hi, thank you for joining. Yeah, biracial people are a small minority. I don't know the statistics on it. I'd be interested to see like how big the biracial community is.
Mm-hmm.
Been biracial, multiracial is somewhat trendy, but it wasn't back in the 90s when I was in school. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Different times.
Very true. Very true.
Very different times. I'm glad you're enjoying the discussion.
Thank you.
Being in an interracial marriage just got decriminalized. Yeah.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think the Loving case was huge in getting interracial marriage to be legal.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Very interesting.
So thanks for all the comments. So my next question I had was, how, when, I know, Heather, you kind of got into this a little bit when you said, you were so excited to tell people you were biracial, because that's not something they really would know or expect of you. So my question was, how do people typically react to finding out that you're biracial?
Yeah, that was really interesting because I remember when I was younger, and like at church or at school, they always have you do like 2 truths and a lie. And, I would usually say like, I'm a twin. I have a sticker collection with over 10,000 stickers. Oh no, wait, well, one of them has to be a lie. But like I had a couple that I would cycle through, and these would be my truths. Those two, and then that I was half Black. And like I'd be like, I'm gonna win, because no one would guess it. So I would try to think of something more outlandish than me being half Black. But yeah, so most people were surprised. And being a physical therapist, I interact with people a lot. And I've been a PT for 10 years. And so a lot of people would ask me, what are you? Which now, at least back then it was like, right now it's like, that's not really appropriate. But I would always say, oh, what do you think I am? Or like, they would be like, are you Italian? Are you this or that? And like, so I would tell them I'm half Black, and they would be very shocked, very surprised. They usually wouldn't, it's not like they would like change how they acted around me. It was just a fact that surprised them because no one would know. I say like, well, you wouldn't know unless I told you. And then I'd usually pull out a picture to prove to them that our dad was Black. And kind of like Heather said, they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, he is a little lighter skinned. So yeah.
I remember when I first found out, I was like, oh, that's interesting, cool. I would have never guessed either.
Yeah, that's the good thing is that, as Holly said, most people are surprised, but I don't think I've ever had a negative reaction, ever.
The only one that I remember, and I don't know if there was, well, it kind of goes into like the stereotypes of being biracial question, but the only reaction that really threw me off was actually a coworker. She was on a different unit at the hospital that I was used to work at. And when I forget how we got on the topic, but I ended up telling her that I was half Black. She's like, wow, you don't sound like it. And I was like shocked. I was like, excuse me? But I was just so thrown off because I had never had that reaction before that I needed to like just kind of ignore it to process it. But in retrospect, I wish I could have like educated her about that. But really, like, I mean, out of 35 years, pretty good. Now I know there's some people though, unfortunately some patients that I had who would be talking to me and they would be saying things like, oh yeah, like those Black people and what they're doing this and this. And I have to bite my tongue and I don't tell them, that I'm half Black. Like I kind of distance myself from it. And it's always kind of like that when you're working in healthcare and people bring up politics. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. But like if someone says something that's racially charged, like or that's racist, I get offended, but I can't really say anything. But then I just make sure that that doesn't come up in conversation. But that would be really hard to kind of keep that back.
Yeah, that would be hard.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I'm like, hey, like you like me, you are nice to me, but you don't know that I'm half Black. You don't know that my dad's Black, that like half of my family's Black, and you're talking about them that way, but you're not treating me that way. And so it's very offensive. So that's the hard thing, is that like sometimes people don't know that they are being racist. And that, I mean, obviously it doesn't mean that like white people wouldn't be offended by those comments either, but they probably would think twice if I actually looked biracial.
Yeah.
So
for sure. I think one thing for me that I realized after learning that you both were biracial was, for me, it made me go, never assume anything.
Yes.
They can look, someone can look completely white and be biracial, or they can look one race, or like just never make any assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
It's a good rule to have. Or
Yes.
good thing to think about.
Patrick said we are growing in accordance to the census. In 2010, it was 9 million of us, and now it's 35 million.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yay.
lot more. And both my niece and nephew are biracial, Black and Mexican. So
Yay.
Nice.
a lot more. I think we should be proud of both sides of us and not be forced to choose a side, loving all of who we are as healthy. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, totally.
Well said.
My dad is Black and my mom is white, Scottish to be precise, and Black. Great grandmother was the product of a Scottish slave master and a slave.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for sharing that, Avion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, our mom's side is mostly Belgian, from Belgium. But there's a mix of British and other things.
Ukrainian, and just we're kind of like mutts on that side.
Let's see. My next question was, do you feel like you were accepted into the community of both their races, into the Black and the white community?
So I'm going to answer this a little bit differently first, and then we can go into the like actual community. I say yes, but one thing that I struggled with is growing up was like the acceptance of for certain like privileges or awards. So I specifically recall in high school there was like some group like I know it wasn't a club, but there was some, like there was a Black student union that you could join and get awards for, and I wanted to be a part of it, but then I felt weird. Like I felt like I couldn't claim that because I wasn't fully Black. And I felt like, oh, if I like apply for this scholarship, people are going to think that I'm taking it away from the people who are, more Black, quote unquote. And so I felt a little bit restricted in some aspects. I was never completely like, it's not like I had applied for something and was like denied and they said, you're not Black, but it prevented me. I think just the thought of it like prevented me from going for like trying in the first place. So we can get into it a little bit later, but I felt like then kind of like what the earlier comment about forcing to choose sides, I felt like I kind of had to default to white a lot because I looked more white and that would be acceptable if that would be considered more acceptable. I think for Holly and I, it was a little bit different, like we said, because we would sort of have more exposure to the Black community on a more intermittent basis, but I always felt accepted. I think since we were growing up mostly in the white community, like there was not really ever an issue of, someone not accepting us. At least that's my perspective on it.
Most definitely.
That's honestly, that's interesting. What you brought up about that, because it reminds me, like, kind of something similar but the opposite side where so my bio dad is half black, half white. So I guess I'm like a quarter white, but I don't know that side of the family at all. I don't have any connection to that side. So, those surveys and questionnaires and stuff where you mark your race, and I'm always wondering, like, should I mark both? I mean, technically I am, but I'm mostly black and I don't know the white side of the family. So I don't know. I just never felt comfortable enough to mark biracial or mark both.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that is something that I remember when we were kids. They didn't have the other. They didn't have the open check marks where you could click both boxes. And so I hated every survey and questionnaire and application that I had to fill out, because I had to choose. And I hated I remember I always thought this way. I hated choosing white just because I looked white, because I felt like I was denying the black side of me. But and when we were applying for schools, like, I remember my mom was like, like, well, you have to choose. So, like, some we put white, some we put black, because it was like it was so hard. And now, like, I'm just so happy that there's the option now, because I always pick multiracial or other, and it just, like, warms my heart. But it wasn't always like that, and that just was really upsetting, because even at that time, when we were kind of estranged from our dad's side of the family, like, I still had that, they were still a part of me, and I didn't want to deny it. So yeah. So yeah, I feel like I was, with the question, like, I feel like I was accepted into both communities, just because it was just kind of like, I'm just making friends and being with people, and I didn't feel like there was a side I had to choose when it came to, like, being in school or church or anything like that.
Yeah. Let's see. A lot of biracial people face in America, like, we can't be proud of our mix. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is it's another deep converse. Yeah.
So true.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I'm glad that you guys feel comfortable enough to share that part with us, and your experience and what it's like, because these are not easy conversations to have a lot of times. So
Sure.
I had having to choose as well 2 or more races.
Nice.
Evan said, I'm the lightest skinned sibling with soft curls, aka the good hair, so it wasn't easy as black kids assumed. I was pompous, so I hardly had friends. I was also the lightest of my siblings, and also with the good hair, quote unquote.
This reminds me of a certain book that we're currently reading for the Diversities Lit Book Club. So I feel like you'll be able to find some relatable things with the main character in The Weight of Blood.
I haven't started it yet, but I'm excited to start.
Ooh.
Yeah, this like, it kind of sums that up a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks you guys for speaking on your experience. Yes. And thank you as well, Yvonne and Magic, for sharing your experiences as well in the comments. So let's see. The next question I had was, were you close, which you kind of answered this a little bit at the beginning, but were you close with both sides of your parents' families?
Yeah. So up until our dad passed away, we were close with, our dad's side. We were close with our mom's side since we, lived with her for most of the time. But when we would go and visit our dad, we would see our grandma, we would see our aunts and uncle and our half siblings. We had 5 or 4 half siblings. And then they had children because they were quite many years older. So our half brother, who we're the closest to, he lives a couple hours away from me in Illinois. But like he's in his 50s, and so our nieces and nephews are in their like late 20s, early 30s. So they feel like more our cousins. And we have cousins in our 60s and 70s who feel like they should be our uncles and aunts. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, but like the ages didn't really matter because like we were just like fully accepted into our dad's side of the family, even though like, hey, like our half brother could have been like, Dad, like this could be my kid, like what the heck you doing, So they just fully took us in and loved us. And I remember like just being, because we had a big family. My dad was one of 11 kids, so a huge family. And I just remember just having just always having fun and being around them and getting to see them sometimes during the holidays. Now, we were estranged from them for a while. Now that we've reconnected, like it like took a little bit because we were like, gosh, like we don't really know each other anymore. I knew you in 8th grade, and then we've been through high school and college, and a lot has changed. But in a way, it felt like nothing had changed because they were family, and we were willing to just kind of get back on track with kind of where we left off in a way. And so like now, like we just had our Davis family picnic in July, and oh my goodness, I could have sat and talked there for like hours, even though some of these family members, like I hadn't seen them since last year, since pre-COVID. But it's all hugs, and our kind of motto is the Davis family, we're closer than most. And I really feel that because we're really all about our heritage. We have like a huge book with our like family lineage. And so I feel like even though we had that time apart, we're still fully accepted. And my half brother and my cousin, we were all trying to we all went into a pool for the lottery when it was the Mega Millions, when it was like the crazy amount in July. And I was like, I told them, I'm like, I had to go in on it in case we won. I wouldn't have wanted to miss out on it. And they're like, oh, you wouldn't have had to worry about that. We would have taken care of you. And that meant the world to me. I just felt, So even though like we don't get to see each other very often because we do live kind of far away, I still feel their love. And hopefully they feel mine.
You said it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, when Heather, like they visited Arizona and Heather got to see them. So that's the hard thing, is that Heather's a little bit farther away. So
still make it work. And that's the beauty, I guess, of social media. So we can still kind of stay connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Social media tends to have its upsides. Let's see. Patrick said, would love to have a conversation about this one day with you, Pastor. My whole channel is dedicated to having mixed race people's stories and issues heard. That is awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would love to um, have a conversation and interview with you. Um, my website and all my links are in the description. So definitely reach out. You can send me an email and we can set that up sometime. Yvonne says, sorry for your father's loss, Holly and Heather. Lost my dad this year to COVID. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
Virtual hug back.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Yes, please do reach out, Magic. I would love to hear from you. Let's see. So, were you? I know, Holly, you were talking about how some people would make these comments not knowing you were half Black and everything. So, my one question I had was, were you ever treated differently when you were out with one parent versus the other? So when you were out with your dad versus your mom, were you ever different treatments?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I don't know if it's because, like, I was younger and just didn't realize it or notice it, but I don't, remember people treating me differently. Like when we were with our dad and we would go to the toy store and he'd be picking out toys or walking down the block and getting, ice cream. Whereas like now you see stories where, some Karen's calling the cops because she thinks that, the parent or the babysitter has stolen the white kids, thankfully didn't have any of those experiences. And it just felt normal, which is nice, at least for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't recall ever experiencing being treated differently, but part of, I'm wondering if, and maybe it sounds bad too, but like when we would hang out with our dad, like we would go to the south side of Chicago, like we would go to his neighborhood, and that was predominantly Black. So I'm not sure if we had many opportunities for there to be those Karens either, because it's like when we were with him, it's not like we were like only in a predominantly white neighborhood. We were actually mostly around Black people. Or a lot of times, like because our family was so close and having so much stuff going on, like there was always someone's birthday party or
our niece, like Lauren, she would always be hanging out with us and we'd go to the American Girl store. We went downtown quite a bit. So
yeah, like there would always be something, we would be doing, but sometimes we would just be hanging out, like watching movies inside and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if it potentially happened and I was just like naive and didn't think about it. Our neighborhood growing up was predominantly white with some, like some Hispanic, but neighbors, like I feel like I didn't at least notice any issues or anything like that, thankfully. But I can imagine, that might have been different if, our parents had stayed married. That probably would have been different.
yeah.
Especially, we, the first, let's see, up until like 4th grade, we went to a Catholic school that was, I think, I think everyone there was white. Like I don't know, Holly, if you can recall someone who wasn't white there.
Yeah, they were they were white.
So, you know, I was very happy once we transferred to the public school in 4th grade, because we're like, this is real life, you know. But literally they were like less than a mile away from each other, these schools. So it was a very different experience. But, you know, I'm like, yeah, I tried to think hard, and I'm like, I wonder if we asked our mom if she knew of something that happened. I'll have to. I meant to ask her, but I forgot.
Well, and you know, so since our mom was married before, we have a half sister on our mom's side who's white, and she's 5 years older. So, you know, for up until that time, until they were divorced, we were all hanging out together, going to the park and things. And there is one story that I enjoy that my mom told us, is that our older sister had, when she would hang out with her friends, you know, at our house, like our dad would just be like, just great, having tons of fun. That like one of the kids, he went back to his family and he's like, so where's my stepdad? When am I going to get a stepdad? And he didn't know that it was. So I just thought that was really cool. And, you know, so like, I feel like that would have been kind of, that would be interesting to see from our older sister's perspective too, because I mean, I didn't think about that. Oh, she had a, you know, black stepdad for, you know, a couple years. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's see. Gosh, there was another question that I had come up. I didn't have it written down before, but as you were talking, it made me think of this, but now I forgot. So
it'll come to
maybe
you.
It'll come back. Yeah.
Well, the next question that I do have written down is, what is something that you love about being biracial?
Yeah, I think like just not like I grew up like having those experiences of, you know, being surrounded by like all Black people, and me being the only white you know, Heather and I being the only like, you know, white looking people, and not having it be awkward, or not like not judging people, because like Heather said, like, well, up until 4th grade we were in a predominantly white school. Our neighborhood was, you know, didn't have a lot of Black people in it, but we were able to have those experiences and not, you know, yeah, I think it like kind of in a way like helped us grow up not being racist, and, you know, just being accepting of both sides, and getting to see, because like our dad's side of the family is huge. Some of them are really loud. You know, we get together for these huge family reunions and picnics. Whereas my mom's side, it's like, hey, we're going to get together for a Christmas dinner once a year. And like, that's it. We're a lot smaller. So it's interesting to see that there can be such stark differences, but it doesn't mean that you don't love each other more or less than the other. It's just the dynamics are kind of different.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about being biracial is that I don't fit one box. So I feel like, you know, just similar to my interests, or, you know, part of who I am, I feel unique. And not like, I don't feel like I'm special. Like, I not like that, or entitled or anything like that, but I just feel like it fits me and who I am, because I am the type of person who like doesn't really, you know, like to be sort of labeled as one thing or another, or just I feel like being biracial like lifts up a lot of like restrictions that I normally would have. And it allows me to, I guess it gives me permission to have conversations with people, so that it's not like, oh well, you're just white so you don't know anything about this, or, and I'm like, well, no, I do. And so but I still do feel um like there's a lot. So one thing that, like, growing up half Black made me realize is that it's like, I know that even being Black is not like a one size fits all, one person fitting into a box kind of thing. And so that has opened up my eyes and perspective to the diversity and variety amongst even like the Black community, amongst the white community. And as Holly said, both sides of our family are very different. So I feel like that kind of helped mold me into who I am, because I was able to get a diverse amount of experiences.
Yes.
And it's not like I can, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like, I was going to say, it's not like I don't view it as like a hat, like, oh, I'm going to wear my like white hat when I need to, and I'll put on like my Black hat when I need to. I don't see it that way. When I was like mentioning kind of like the advantages, I just feel like it, allows other people to feel more comfortable, I feel like, if I'm having those conversations.
Yeah.
Let's see. Patrick says, I love how we think differently. Like, we always try to look at both sides and we try to be balanced. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think back to a something that happened that this may, it's somewhat connected, but it relates back to Holly talking about how like she was being like overprotective of like our Black side and of Black people. And I truly do feel that, because especially with Black Lives Matter, like that, like I was being very loud and clear, like on my Facebook page, I'm like posting photos. I'm like, you guys, there's no question, I'm half Black. And so if you're not cool with that, like, you can unfriend me, kind of thing. But also, like, I distinctly remember it was probably, I think it was like a couple years maybe after undergrad, or maybe it was like late in my college years. I was downtown with my boyfriend at the time, or we were actually in Chinatown, and where we had parked, we had to walk a couple blocks to get to the main part of Chinatown, in downtown Chicago. And on the side of the street we parked, we had to walk past a bus stop, and then there were maybe 3 or 4 Black men who were kind of standing and chatting and stuff like that. And my boyfriend, my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, but he is not white. But he was like wanting to cross the street. And I was so mad at him, because I was like, why do you want to cross the street? If that was like 4 white guys right there, like, you wouldn't want to cross the street. And he got offended because he thought that I was calling him racist, when he's like, I'm not white. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. You can still have stereotypes against other people. Mm-hmm. And I was so mad. And I don't remember how how it all ended up, but I truly do feel like that is how I take that part of me that seriously. I called him out. I was like, yeah, no, that's not cool. And, you know, I think because Holly and I, you know, this is the what is the something that you love about being biracial? We're aware of, you know, color and race, but I feel like it has helped me not worry about being the only person in the room who looks a certain way. Because when my husband goes, like when we've gone to certain, I do like agility with my dogs. And when we go to those events, he's like, I'm the only non-white person. And I'm like, what like, I'm looking around like, why does that matter? It matters to him, and it's obviously like it matters to him, and he cared enough to mention it. But I was like, why does that matter? We're all people. We're all having fun together. Everyone is talking to you and being welcoming and that kind of thing. And because he brought it up, it just made me realize that like I don't think that way. Like I'm just with people, and I'm not like looking around to say like, okay, who's like not white in here or something like that. But he's like very conscious of it. And I think he tends to feel like uncomfortable if he's and that's a very obviously he's not biracial. And he grew up, you know, Indian. So he's in a very different situation. And it made me realize that like it doesn't matter, you know, if you're biracial or, you know, not white. It's like you're going to have a different feeling when you go into a room of people, and everyone has a different perspective. So I've kind of changed how I react to those situations to try to have a bit more like empathy, or at least a bit more understanding of like, yeah, he didn't grow up like me, and so he's going to have a different reaction in these situations. So I think it helped me to be, yeah, I don't know how to end that, but
no, I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying, where it's like I'm kind of like aware of like I've learned not to judge, and like I was in my head when I said that sentence, I was specifically thinking about if there was like a Black man, I wouldn't cross the street or something like, but someone else might want to. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about too. So I know what you're saying.
You know, I find it interesting getting on the topic of crossing the street when you see a Black person, because I saw a TikTok recently where that was being stitched and stuff, and it was this little kid in the TikTok was like, his mom was saying, what do you do when you're lost? And he's like, I look for a big Black man. And she was like, what do you say when you find him? It's like, tell him I'm lost. Yeah. And the creator that stitched that video was talking about how, like, you know, there's some people in the comments who were saying, oh, that's racist and this and that. But statistically, I love that he brought up the statistics. Statistically, the kid is much safer approaching a Black man than a white man. And that's just a fact of reality.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love that.
Believe it.
Avian said, can I ask a question? Did you have more Black friends or white friends, biracial even? I had a handful of mixed friends, but I chose friends because of their personality, i.e. genuine and no drama.
Yeah, we kind of did that too. And because we were twins, we had the same like circle of friends, even though they always put us in different classes, so they couldn't get us mixed up growing up. But I feel like in school we just ended up having more white friends. But like in elementary school, we were friends with there were two transfer students. One was from Albania and one was from Serbia, and we befriended both of them. But then I feel like, so we also grew up in the church, and going to church, that's where we got a lot of our diversity too. And a lot of our friends were Black, white. So I feel like we got more of both races from our friends in church. I don't really remember any like necessarily biracial friends at all. Heather, can you? Yeah, it's just like wasn't a thing.
No, yeah. Which I think was like, yes, like college is expensive and it sucks and everything like that. But, we were really lucky to go to a high school that had 4,000 students. So the diversity there, and we'd have like international nights. I mean, it was unprecedented. I think some of the activities we chose were diverse. Like you were in the musicals, Holly. We were in cross country together.
Mhm.
I think we were like friendly with a lot of people, but I think the people who like made friends with us were mostly white.
It's 2:00.
Okay. Now I lost my train of thought.
You're okay.
So, okay, well, going to what I was saying, what the question before was something you love about being biracial. So my next question that kind of went along with that was, is there anything about being biracial that you wish maybe was different?
Yeah, so I think like now that like the surveys and questionnaires kind of, like I said, opened up to being able to say that you're biracial or multiracial or click more than one thing, just helps you feel more comfortable. But oh gosh, what was I going to say about? Oh, like, so kind of what Heather was saying about, oh, I didn't know, like I felt like I was taking something away from, people that actually looked Black for awards and things like that. Because that's kind of how I feel now with, and even now, like, because I didn't always have biracial on my author bios, and it wasn't until maybe a year or two, or like maybe 2 years ago, that I had put that on there. But I still felt like, oh, well, I'm not really, like, I kind of felt like this like fraud in a way. And it's kind of weird to feel like that, because I'm like, well, there's other people who are more biracial than me because they actually look it. Or people are gonna, it's like if you're part of the LGBT community and you write a book that's Own Voices, and people are saying, well, and they're not out yet, and it's like, well, you have to, you can't write from that if you're not. So people have to come out and say that, and so then we kind of do that too when we're looking for our books by BIPOC authors. Oh, this is a white author, and just like move on. So actually, I just realized that I kind of need to look and make sure that this, maybe this person is biracial, and include them in that, because I feel like some of the the We Need Diverse Books and some of those hashtags, I'm like, well, I don't feel like I can participate in that, because I feel like I'm taking it away from someone who really, does need it. But then so it's kind of hard because I still feel like I don't really have somewhere where I belong. So I feel like maybe if these things could open it up and kind of include that, in their language or something, just for clarification, because then I'm left to assume, and then I just say, no, I'm not a part of this community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. And like I was saying about the international nights, in high school, it was like I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere because I was like, I can't join like this
The
group.
BSU, the Black Student, like you said.
Yeah, I can't like do these dances. I can't, like, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. So I think now there are a lot of places and spaces for us to, not feel alone. Like now, it's like great now knowing the statistics. Okay, there's 35 million biracial people. And like, I think though, because even amongst the biracial community, there's like so much diversity too. I mean, that it still feels like we don't really fit in anywhere, but I'm like, I don't know if I need to, like, can I have a toe here, a toe here, a toe here type of thing. But I think it would have been really helpful, like when I was younger and earlier on, to kind of have that space. I felt like because of our situation growing up, it felt more like, we'd be immersed in the Black community, and then like suddenly it's taken away, and then we're at home and there's no involvement in it at all. And so I wish that it felt more of this like integrated part versus like on and off.
Yeah, that actually made me remember that, like, the first time I saw someone who was white, who was half Black, was senior year of high school, when Heather and I started doing Billy Blank's Tae Bo. And if you know Billy Blanks, he's Black. And there were like two people on either side of him that were kind of like the main people to work out. And there was this white woman with blonde hair. And, Heather and I happened to look up online, and we were like, oh my God, that's his daughter. And it's crazy to me that like it took like 17 years before I saw someone who looked white that was half Black. So, and maybe that's the hard thing, is that I have met those people, but they haven't identified themselves as biracial, or it's just like, it's not something that comes up in conversation because I'm not asking them and they're not asking me. But maybe I have encountered more people than I know.
Yeah. See, Event said, me too, Holly. I identified as Black for many years to make people feel comfortable, but I felt like I'm disavowing my Scottish ancestors. That's a good point. I did remember one of my earlier questions that I was going to ask, which was, Heather, when you were bringing up some of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything, I wanted to ask, during that time with the movement and the protests and everything, what was that like for you guys, seeing everything? And I know, Holly, that was one of the reasons you started the Diversity is Lit book club. So if you want to share about that.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, as you know, I started that because it was hard because even my husband, who's white, like he like felt moved to like join these protests, but then it was also at the peak of COVID and he was scared about that exposure around so many people, so he didn't go. But I know he was like, we got to show our support. I was just so heartbroken because, and I like need to not cry, like I was thinking like that could be my dad if he was still alive, that could be my brother, and it really hurt me because like there's so many innocent people. I'm blanking on her name, Breonna Taylor, just sleeping in her bed. Just that could be my niece, like it just broke my heart. And just spreading the word, donating, and then uplifting these Black voices or and diverse authors, I felt like was a way that I could still do this in the long term. Because I saw everywhere people were like, yeah, you care now, but you're going to forget about us in 2 months. You're going to forget about us in a year. And so that was one of the ways I created the book club, was so that like they couldn't say that about me. And my merch, like I donate a portion of the profits to the Legal Defense Fund. So it's like, yeah, it was a way for me to say like, I'm not forgetting about you, and it's not going to take another death for us to care, for anyone to care about you,
Yeah. I'm so glad you started that.
Thank you.
And, for me during that time, it was really hard because I felt guilty. Like I believe I felt guilty for being like half Black but looking white. Like my post was I pulled it up. I said, Black Lives Matter because I'm half Black, but I've never feared for my life because of the color of my skin. I grew up in the city of Chicago and not once worried about being profiled or mistreated or accused. Black family, friends, and colleagues, I will never have to go through what you have, but know that here and behind the scenes, I'm fighting alongside you. And I posted a picture that Holly and I had taken with our dad's side of the family when we had a reunion in New Orleans. And that sums up how I felt. Like I was like, I don't have to worry, and that makes me angry. It just made me so mad. And I did and still do feel like I could do more, but I don't think that feeling is ever going to go away until that injustice stops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well said.
And thank you both for sharing that.
Yeah.
Being biracial, multiracial is a superpower. There's too many unique perspectives, like being bilingual, multilingual, which I am. I also am.
Oh, nice. That is awesome.
Ooh, that's interesting. What languages do you speak?
I was just about to ask that.
Okay.
I'm also bilingual, and I speak Creole, Haitian Creole. So
I didn't know awesome. That.
Yeah. Let's see. Why did I leave off? So my next question was specifically about your writing. Since both of you are writing biracial characters, I wanted to ask, how has your identity influenced your writing and the characters that you create?
That is an excellent question because up until my current novel, I had not written any biracial characters,
Same.
not even as side characters. And all of my main characters growing up until this current novel, the main characters were white. And
Same.
it's like I'm baffled by that, but to me it also makes sense because of how we grew up, kind of more white, in more in the white community. But I am really grateful that, as we have, better embraced our biracial identity, we are letting that come out in our writing. And I feel like I've had always been somewhat conscious of diversity. I have had side characters who were not white, but like I never put someone who was like me on the page because I feel like I had never read that and I had never seen that in books, or it took a long time for that to come up in TV shows and movies too, but now it's becoming a lot more commonplace. And I know we'll talk about the books later on, but I feel like part of it is that I hadn't, I didn't really see the permission to do it because of that exposure, which sounds weird because it's like, well, okay, if you don't see it, do it. But it's like, it's weird that I feel that it's weird that it took me so long to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you said that, and I can totally understand because I felt the same way. Like I didn't start writing Black characters as main characters in my story until I was an adult and like started writing more seriously. But I've always written stories ever since I was a kid. But because I never saw Black main characters, I defaulted to writing white characters in all of my stories.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I kind of like echo everything that Heather said about like, and my first like fantasy book that I wrote after fan fiction, like there were so many characters. They were all white. The villain's white. And it was crazy. And I had like two like distant secondary characters who were Black. And yeah, it just was weird that like I didn't put it in my head to like have representation. So I think that's a part of growing as an author too, and learning that. And in the Celestial Code, my main character is white, but her the love interest is Black. And so, I was slowly evolving, starting to add more diversity naturally, and not just because, oh, I have to have someone who's Black. And then the main character's best friend, she was Korean. And so it was like having some of that diversity, but it was weird that like I never thought to have a biracial main character until Project Diamond, which Vanessa has been able to read some of it because she did a diversity read for me for my character with muscular dystrophy. So it was interesting to kind of be able to sprinkle in some of those things. But I will say that maybe in the back of my head, it took me a while to do this because I remember listening to an interview. Gosh, it was probably in 2000. 16 or 17. It was a long time ago, but it was by it was with Marie Lu, and she had was talking about, I believe it's Legend. Tell me if I'm switching the characters in her stories, but Legend with Day, who was Asian with blue eyes, and he may have had blonde hair as well. I can't remember. But she had mentioned that she got a lot of pushback on that because people were like, oh, you're whitewashing your Asian main character. And she was like, no, I saw a picture of this Asian boy with blue eyes and blonde hair, and I thought he was beautiful. And so she made that the main character. And I think that's where my fear was up until now, finally, as kind of own voices has exploded, that has made me realize that I've got my own voice to tell as someone who's biracial. I have my own story, and I can give my main character this. And so that's what I decided to do for Project Diamond, was make my main character biracial, whose mom was white and dad was black, but she looks white. And like, I think it was partially a courage thing too, to not be like, I'm not whitewashing this biracial character because she's me. So it kind of took a while to have that come out. But yeah, I'm happy that I do now.
And Avian said English, Spanish, currently learning Korean. So
What?
that's cool.
Okay. I'm
You
like,
too?
yeah, because like I'm conversational Spanish with like my patients, and like I'm not completely fluent, but I can hold a conversation with a patient. And then I'm also trying to learn Korean since I got into K-pop. So you're just,
Wow.
she really is my internet bestie.
You guys are twinning.
I love it. Because she told me that she got into K-pop during the pandemic. And I'm like, me too. Yeah.
That is awesome.
There was this study done where readers reading a character who is never really described tends to default to white male in their imagination. Yes. And I agree, because like I've since doing more of the diversity work and becoming more aware of things, I have noticed as well that when I read a book, if a character is not really described, I will default to a white character.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I think it's just because that's how it was for so long. Books were always white characters. You didn't see many BIPOC characters or biracial, multiracial characters. And so for so long, we had white characters, and that was what we kind of grew up with. And I think that's how it became the default.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have to read Celestial Code.
It is awesome. She needs to finish the series someday. She will.
When after I get an agent with another book, we revisit the Celestial Code, and they do decide to pick it up.
Sounds good.
Let's see. So my next question, which Holly, I think you touched on a little bit earlier, but it's about stereotypes. What are some stereotypes about being biracial, black and white, that you think writers should be careful of?
Yeah, I think knowing that there's 35 million of us, like it's not the one size fits all, and that can, like, someone who's biracial can look totally different, and like, and that's the thing, like biracial, it doesn't just mean, black and white. It's like Hispanic and black, and like, and there's so many facets to it, and and there's going to be blonde-haired, blue-eyed Asians. And that doesn't mean that the Asian author is whitewashing her character. So
I would say some stereotypes would be that the person like acts and talks differently, like when they're around Black people versus white people. I have not, come across anyone that I know of who is Black and white that does that. They could very well exist, but I think overall that might be a little bit of a stereotype. And, like I think writers should really, like if they want to write someone who's biracial, they should obviously know what mixed race they want, and it needs to make sense, like, for them. And like to know that biracial people are very, proud, like we're very proud of our background. Try to take every opportunity to not let like one identity really overshadow the other in terms of who we are.
Like those stereotypes of saying like, well, you don't sound Black, because people will even say that to Black people. Wow, well, you don't act Black. What does that mean? So.
Yeah. Right.
It's their perception of what a Black person is.
Exactly.
Yep.
Oh, and also, while you said that, you reminded me another thing to be careful of is having someone say to a Black character, a Black person, you're very articulate, or you sound very articulate. So, that's not the compliment you think it is.
Right.
So I'm wondering, and I don't know this in the Black and white biracial community, like I'm wondering if people have had different experiences, like if their mom was Black and their dad was white versus their mom being white and their dad being Black. I'm sure like, there might have been some different experiences, but so that could kind of change things, but
yeah. That was actually, thank you for saying that, because that was the question I had. Because I remember watching some TikToks from the biracial community where people were talking about how it's different when you have a Black mom versus a white mom, and you can tell when a biracial kid has a Black mom versus a white mom. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So that was a question that I was wondering if you guys knew anything about.
Well, I've been like seeing some TikToks where like I actually just saw one yesterday where the mom was Black and the dad was white, and then I forget what the music was playing, like 2-for-1 deal or something like that, and then they each had twins, but one twin looked like the mom and the other twin looked like the dad. And so it was really interesting that like they kind of got both spectrums of the biracial look from different parents.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I see we've got a couple new people joining us. So I see Vixen of Fiction. Hi. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
And Evian said, we code switch in the Caribbean, as my Trini accent is sometimes hard for non-Trinis to understand, so I speak proper English around Americans. That's interesting.
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
And I see just Eva joined us. Hi. You act white is a stereotype, yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they do think it's a compliment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
wrong.
Articulate compliment. Not sure I said hi, but I mean, well, that's okay. I'm glad you've been here and you're enjoying this. Vixen says, I'm a Black mom of 4 biracial children. Oh,
Awesome.
I was like, I did not know that. That's awesome.
yeah. That'd be interesting to learn more about that, more about your story. I'm white with no other races in my home, but I've witnessed racism dished out to biracial extended family.
Mm.
That's, I feel like that's also a tough thing to just like even to be around and witness. You know, especially when it's family members that might be saying the comments, these comments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's tough.
The example that comes to mind was a comment about my niece's hair from great grandma. It's
Mm.
always sometimes seems to be the hair thing. I called her out.
Thank you for calling her out.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. I just had a couple more questions left on here, and then I'm going to get into the Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions for Holly and Heather, drop them in the chat box, and I will get to them during the Q&A session. But my next question was, what do you think writers should know when writing a biracial character, and what advice would you give?
I think I kind of touched upon that a little bit in that
Stereotypes one.
yeah, that like, you know, we don't fit a mold and so they're not going to fit a mold.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that they, you know, do what's best for that character and what makes sense for the story, because, you know, do they have a biracial character who is just in the story versus is the story centered around, you know, their biracial identity, or you know, what's that purpose? Because I mean, similar to, I think, from what I know in amongst the LGBTQ plus community, is they want to see themselves in stories like
Not centered around their
normal
trauma.
everyday
Yeah.
stories, not centered around not centered around that. So you know, I would be careful having it be too heavily on race if you are not biracial yourself, versus like them being there and, you know, also being like equal to, you know, all of the other characters.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great point, and I think that comes down to something I've talked about before is knowing the difference between an own voices type of story and writing a diverse character. And I have a video about that on my channel. I will try to remember to link it below when we're done here. But yeah, there's a difference between, writing diverse characters into your story that's just a part of the story versus trying to tell someone's story that is own voices.
Exactly.
Yes, I've watched that
Mhm.
video and it's very good. I highly
Me
recommend
too.
it.
Same here. I was gonna say that's the only one you need. Yeah, and I think as I started to actually write more diversely, not just when writing a biracial character, but any BIPOC character, um, is being aware of your descriptions, because that's something that beta reader had called me out on in the Celestial Code when I was writing about my Black character. Making sure that you're not saying chocolate skin or tan coffee, not like describing them with food, you know. And there's which I didn't know. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not trying to be insensitive. It was just not being aware of it. So it doesn't mean that are bad or racist or anything. You just don't know how to, write it, in a sensitive and appropriate way. So in the next one, I'll share, but I have some websites and resources on how to describe people's skin.
I was actually going to recommend one as you were saying that, and it might be the same one you're thinking of. Is it the Writing with Color?
Yes, that is one of them. A beautiful, beautiful Tumblr site.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like the eye opener for me. So I think making sure that you are doing your research, and if it is something where it is more sensitive, and you are going into race and the things that Heather talked about, then consider hiring a sensitivity reader with someone who's biracial, or a person of color to like look into those things. Because you'll learn a lot, and there's so many things that's like you wouldn't even realize it. It's like, oh, I didn't even know I was missing that. Like, it only just like scratches the surface. So just being aware that there probably is something that you can learn from it, with your writing to make your writing stronger.
Yeah.
And then I do want to say I'm glad you mentioned the skin color, because I would say for biracial people, like that is something that we are very hyper aware of if we look more white or look more black. So it would make sense for that to somewhat come up somewhere in the description of the person, or at least their interactions, if it makes sense in the story. But that can be kind of tricky. Very, very tricky. But I feel like you can't have a biracial character and not like have an awareness, have them kind of show that they're aware of their skin color.
Yeah. So the last question, which Holly you touched on, was, are there any books or resources that you know of that can help writers who are trying to portray biracial characters? And I will put links to the resources Holly and Heather mentioned in the description after this live stream.
Yeah, so Nia had said it, writing with color. It was like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, we all know about this site, like this wonderful site. Now I don't know if this is off of the Writing with Color Tumblr site, but there's also We Are All Mixed Up. This is not Africa. This is not Latinx. And then the last one I think Heather was the one who had brought this up to me before, was using Quora.com, Quora.com, to like ask questions to the general public, because that can also help like widen your net too, because it's so hard. It's like, well, you just have to find the right beta reader who's gonna, like, if I didn't have that beta reader, no one else had mentioned that to me. So I'm so grateful for that person for telling me, because I wouldn't have known, and probably still would have been writing that. So it's just yeah, it's just really important to make sure you cast a wide net.
Yeah.
And like, I agree with all the resources that Holly's mentioned. I'll also add that I think it is a good idea to read books with biracial characters to see how they are portrayed. Both that are kind of centered around their identity and those that are not centered around their identity, to sort of help with, you know, the pre-writing, you know, that research, because guides and things like that are very helpful, but also just seeing how they're portrayed on the page in various ways, I think, is also really important. There's a few books that you know, are specifically kind of centered around it. Like Blended is a middle grade book that has been on my list for a really long time, and I really want to read it.
Same.
But and then there's some, you know, there's some books that it's not entirely centered around it. Like I guess like To All the Boys I've Loved Before is not centered around like her Korean white identity. It's just seamlessly like integrated into the story. So like try to have a balance between like both of those to kind of help you portray them appropriately.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I am going to get into the Q&A part. I see some questions that we have here. So the first one I'm seeing here, do you have any book recs that show a good characterization of a biracial character? And you just mentioned a couple, Heather, Blended, To All the Boys I Loved Before. I will put links for those in the description after this. Is there any others that you guys know of?
Yeah, there's another, and actually, you know, I haven't read enough books by biracial authors and with biracial main characters, so this has been helpful for me to kind of broaden my horizon there too. But because Blended was on my TBR, but the other one is Color Me In, and I had to look up to make sure I didn't mess up her name, is Natasha Diaz, but she's half Jewish and half Black. So that is one of the books that I really, really, really want to read.
You'll have to include them in the poll, in the future poll.
Yes.
Yes.
I do need to do that. We need, like, is there a biracial month?
Is there?
I don't know.
Yeah, look, I gotta look.
It's a good question. Evian said, my late grandma always harassed me to straighten my hair. We were under British rule, so it's hard to break Eurocentric beauty standards. Love my big curly hair. Yes, that's awesome. I love my curls now, but up until college, I've always straightened it. My mom has straightened it from the time I was like 8 till I got to college. And it was always so hard for her to comb my hair. I would always cry as she was trying to do
Oh.
it. And so she's like, it's just easier or straightening it.
Mm.
Fixin says, I know as a Black mom, I have zero tolerance for colorist behavior. I nipped it in the bud early on with family members. My kids don't tolerate it either.
Good.
Great.
Awesome.
Love it.
I checked. There is March is Multiracial Heritage Month.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Don't feel too bad, Holly. I've been describing myself as camera complexion for years. The more you know.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's the other thing. Like I always say at the beginning, no group is a monolith. So, as much as, writers get the advice of not using food to describe their characters, especially their darker skinned characters, there are some BIPOC people who will use those descriptions for themselves. I was actually planning on doing a video on this either later on this year if I have time, or maybe beginning of next year, because I saw Trevor Noah make a comment about this specific thing on an interview he did, and I thought it was so interesting, and I wanted to talk about that. So,
ooh, I would love that.
yeah.
Yes, I love his memoir.
About the food colors, be careful. Some people don't mind it, but some can't stand it. Yes, Tumblr writing with color can help you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. As someone who struggled with weight, I find characters said to be heavy that never have any thoughts on it on their own are not realistic. I see how that works with biracial skin tone. Yes.
Yes.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Let's see. Love a good middle grade. I'm going to add that to my list. Blended. Yes.
Yay.
And Vixen says, oh, I saw that Trevor Noah interview. Yes. That was an interesting one. So I when I saw it, I was like, oh, this would be a good topic to get into and talk about. So, well, does anyone else have any final questions before we wrap this up? Last chance to put any more in the chat box.
And if you're watching the replay, because I know some people said when I shared it, they said that they were going to catch the replay. So if you're watching the replay, feel free to put in questions and we'll still answer them.
Yes. So definitely leave a question or a comment down below if you are watching the replay. And let's see. Well, I just want to say thank you, Holly and Heather, for being here with me today and talking about this and opening up so much about your experiences and being biracial. I really loved having you guys on here for the interview. And I'm excited because we talked about having you back on again in the future to talk about writing twin characters.
Yay.
Yes.
Good for that one.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And like I said, I learned a lot too about exposing myself to reading more books, with biracial main characters, seeking those out, and just realizing how many biracial people there are in the world. So realizing that there are those differences too. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for everyone who joined us in the chat and made this such an awesome discussion. Thank you for sharing your own experiences as well. If anyone here is interested in seeing more of the writing diversity interviews, I do have a playlist listed in the description box. So I started doing these interviews last summer. So there's a playlist over a year's worth to watch. And let's see, I see a couple more comments. Thank you, Avon, for being here. I'm glad you found our channel, our discussion as well. And I'm glad you can make it today. And my stories almost always have a biracial character.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. Yes.
Avian told me that too last week. She's like, I only write biracial main characters. It's awesome.
I'll have to you'll have to let me know what the name of your books. So I definitely want to check them out.
Same.
Same.
All right, so thank you all for being here again. And all the links to follow Holly and Heather are all in the description below, as well as links to follow me on here and other platforms. And if anyone here is interested in learning more about writing diverse characters, I do have an online course that goes into that as well. So that will be in the description below as well. So thanks, you guys. And I will see you next month. Well, I will have a couple videos up, hopefully, for next month. I'm trying to get back into doing some other regular videos as well as the live streams. So I should have a couple up in the next couple weeks, but also look forward to another interview next month as well. So bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.